at the right time have had an amount of Bitcoin that today would be absolutely life-changing for anybody, and decided to create a business. And because of the business, they kept having to invest all their Bitcoin in the business, sell it down to pay staff, and just never accumulated a similar stash. And essentially, yeah, because they had all these cash flow needs because of the business, if they had just stuck with Bitcoin and not created the business, they would. And I do know a lot of people that are actually, have been through the whole journey, the whole ride, and are just incredibly upset with their actions that have led to them just not really being what they could have been if they had just stuck to it. It's quite a sad story, actually. There's quite a few people like that.
Yeah,
and I think Andreas was just kind of working the whole way through. And, he was earning his Bitcoin, he was spending his Bitcoin, he was advocating for Bitcoin. And I think he just never got in a position to accumulate like the stack that you would have thought someone that was such an advocate for Bitcoin would have done. I know a lot of people.
He lost it too. Like he had to get bailed out. Or like I think the community came together to give him his Bitcoin, because I think he had something happen where maybe it was Mount Gox or it was something.
No, it was a fantastic story. Basically, Roger Ver, who was, everyone's got their opinion about Roger Ver, but at the end of the day, he was the one that was providing the liquidity into Mount Gox in the early days. And he was the one going store to store trying to get people to accept Bitcoin and creating YouTube videos and investing in all the startups and stuff.
And posters. I remember the poster.
Yeah.
The honey badger.
Yeah. But Roger Ver, I think he put out a tweet that was mocking Andreas because they got in a bit of a fight on Twitter or something, if I remember correctly. And he was kind of like, well, I'm a billionaire and you're not. And then everyone was like, all right, well, let's change that. So someone created a wallet address or something, and everyone just started giving Andreas Bitcoin because they were like, holy shit, Andreas doesn't have much Bitcoin. He's the reason I'm here. And all the people that got rich because they watched his presentations said this isn't right. So they just sent him like $1 million worth of Bitcoin. I can't remember when it was. He doesn't like telling this story, actually, because he doesn't want to get doxxed, but it's all published. So sorry, Andreas. Yeah, and they made sure he had his stash of Bitcoin, and I think he'd learned his lessons by this time. And I think he's very quiet now, just with his head down, just doing what he loves doing.
Jimmy Song was another guy who was influential for me because he gave an insight and started being a face out there. He was trying to sell training courses at some point, but even before that, he was a core developer who was putting his face out there and his interests and his opinions on things. So it really rang. It was insight for me because I'm not like a software guy. I was a telecom guy, but it showed me that there was really depth to what's going on the core. Like there was a structure, there was all this stuff behind what Bitcoin really is, and he could explain it in detail where I was lacking. So there was Andre, there was Jimmy Song, and early on, like 2013, when my story of missing out was 2013. There was this like guy, a buddy at work, who had this guy. He said, "This guy in California, he's crazy, but look at these emails he's sending me. He always sends like a weekly. Here's what you need to invest in." And this guy was a real gold bug. He had all those things that probably are the bad connotations of the gold bugs who are annoying and won't stop talking about it, So he forwarded me some of these emails about Bitcoin. I read them. I'm like, oh, this is cool, but God, this is so weird. But I'm in telecom. This does ring. I understand this network thing and how that's going to be powerful. And so I remember thinking it was like, I don't know, $170 for a Bitcoin. And the next Monday I was going to come back to work and I was going to start talking to my buddy about buying some, but it had bumped up to like 270. I'm like, well, shit, this is over. We missed it. But the depth that's needed to understand it, like everybody, all of us have our piece, right? Some of us have a financial background. Some of us have a gold background where you understand sound money. That wasn't me. I had a technical background where I thought, oh, the power of the internet, the World Wide Web, and crowdsourcing is powerful. That's what this is. Had these pieces, right? But there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough like there was no Michael Saylor out there giving you the 18 episodes with Breedlove telling you the history of money that you could go find. I mean, a lot of us would just voraciously look for info on it, but you just ran into roadblocks. You didn't find much. And Jimmy Song, you know, no offense, he's only so good at articulating his very small piece of it. So in 2013, I lost interest, and it wasn't until like 2017 when my brother called me. He's like, "Have you heard of Bitcoin?" I'm like, "Wait, that's still around?" And then it clicked right away that this thing is not going away, and I got way interested. But it's so different now.
Ben, is this not the reason that's the best meme ever for Bitcoiners? You get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. And it's not it's not that you're not taking the piss on anybody. You're just saying, man, missed opportunities, final understanding what the financial system is. Everything comes together, and you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is what you find out. And you look back. Look, I don't know with Andreas. I can only explain to you guys his breakdown of what it represents to me is the best thing I've ever heard. Now, maybe it may not be as good to other people. I can just tell you, to me, Andreas Antonopoulos, he was like one of the first ones to just totally break it down, explain what was wrong with the system. And some people that understood him, they took that knowledge to heart. They took that knowledge to heart, and guess what? They acted upon that knowledge. And that's been a beautiful thing to watch it unfold. Yes, he went into Ethereum. He wrote a book on Ethereum. I get it. Yeah. Let's crucify him at the stake of the Bitcoin maxis. I get that too. That's what we do. That's all we do here. He changed my life.
I love it. Yeah, you said it a second ago. None of us knew what we were doing when we were buying it, and that encapsulates it for me.
Yeah, the story with Jimmy Song, from my memory anyway, everyone's got a slightly different one, is I think Jimmy Song was platformed by Tone Vays, I think initially, because he had the deep technical understanding, and Tone Vays was kind of like from the trading technical analysis background. And then Tone Vays was platformed by Mad Bitcoins. What's his name? Thomas or whatever.
Thomas.
And he would invite everyone on every week, and they just go through all this week's Bitcoin. And some of his guests were like the original, like Bitcoin Not Bombs, when it was just a real, activist movement against the central banks and all that stuff. Then Tone Vays kind of got
Simon. Yeah. Simon, is that good or bad?
Oh, I'm still there. I'm still there. I'm still trying to get.
No. What I mean. No. What I mean, is it good or bad? Like people that are quote unquote onboarded, like most of us are just plebs that just come in. We find out about this thing called Bitcoin, and we just like to talk about it. Versus like someone that has a technical background, we got to bring him in. Is that good or bad, do you think, or not necessary?
I mean, here's how I think about Bitcoin. I'll finish off the back job and then I'll answer that. But so then I think Tone Vays was platformed by Bitcoin Uncensored, which was Chris Rose and what's the other guy, Wayne?
John Seth. Joshua.
Yeah, John Seth. How can I forget that? And they basically created these mad multi like hour-long podcasts where they were just calling everyone out. And they came from an ideology of Bitcoin is only useful if you want to buy things illegally on Silk Road, and everything else is a scam trying to steal stuff. And they would expose everyone. They were absolutely hilarious, to be honest. They were there like from the early Silk Road days and that type of stuff. And I think, that was the evolution of content. When did Laura Shin start? When did that all start? Wayne, do you remember?
I think Laura was around 2015, maybe like late. I remember I was at the first consensus. I won the hackathon there with Tyrion. And I remember she covered that event. And around that time, she started talking about herself as being the first mainstream journalist to cover anything in crypto. So I want to say 2015.
Okay. So when was so then obviously Adam Levine and Andreas did Let's Talk Bitcoin. Was that before Bitcoin Uncensored?
I don't know if it was before Bitcoin Uncensored. That was probably in 2013, maybe. I mean, this is a long time ago, and these were never seen as important events in my life. So I'm just trying to like remember. I know that Let's
Yeah.
Talk Bitcoin, maybe like late 2017. I'm sorry, late 2012 was the earliest episode, and then I'm certain that Let's Talk Bitcoin existed in 2013 at some point.
Yeah, and Let's Talk Bitcoin was really trying to figure out how we could do everything Ethereum did, but on Bitcoin. And so that was always covering the deep technicals of the Omni protocol and colored coins and just getting really, really geeky.
Yeah, just to be clear about that though, this was before Ethereum was even a word that anybody, because there was a whole
Yeah.
wave of altcoins in between, like I say like 2012 and 2014, where people were just trying. It was called the Bitcoin 2.0 phase at the time, if you remember correctly, Simon. And there were all these people trying to do experimental things with other altcoins.
Yeah, I think the first, I remember the first coin market cap, I think it had 8 coins on. Do you remember when it first came?
I don't know about like
It was
the
like
day it
Prime
launched, but I
Coin,
remember
Ape Coin.
early. I remember
Like,
early because I was hanging out in what eventually became the Whale Club, um, sort of channel for.
oh, the coin dojo Telegram group. I think that's where I met you.
No, not the Telegram group. I mean, like the actual. What were we using? We were TeamSpeak. There was a bunch of people who were like trading Bitcoin and talking about Bitcoin trading all the time on
Oh,
TeamSpeak.
all the Bitfinex guys, all them lot.
Yeah, and then eventually it became Whale Club. It went through a couple different iterations.
Yeah,
Dude, this is so fascinating. So can I pose a question to you, super OGs? Wayne, you said something the other day that was really you corrected me the other day when I was talking about how the amount of research that's needed to become a Bitcoiner like we are, where you're maybe not all in, but you're putting real money in. Like you got a somewhat understanding and comfortable with it. And I was saying like, look at all the info that's out. There's going to be so many more Bitcoiners coming because the education is accelerating. But I think you made a really good point, because it's that barrier to entry isn't. I mean, it's not even for the average person to really understand Bitcoin. Like, it takes a lot. And you said, look, I don't think everybody's going to understand it. They're going to come in or they're going to not come in, but it's not going to be that. If we have to wait for everybody to understand it like we do, we're never going to get to full Bitcoinization, because that's probably never going to happen. And I fully agree with that, except we're so early. And I'm looking at you guys you guys understood it enough to go pretty big way before even the 0.5% of the world did, right? And there wasn't enough info. You just kind of had all the pieces for it to click for you. I wonder, as each wave comes, each 4-year cycle comes, a certain level of, I'm not going to say dumber, but people who maybe understand it less but trust the lemming effect of the world going towards it more. Like if I see it on the news a bunch, I'm more likely to just jump in with everybody else, right? There's more of that coming. But where do you see this cycle? Every cycle, it seems like we 10x the amount of adoption and people coming in, just for a round number. But what do you see causing the next 10x and the next 10x? Maybe just this one and the next one. Do people really have to fully understand it or grok it the way you guys do, or do they just get on the boat because Larry Fink says so?
No. I mean, they
don't.
So I think first of all,
yeah.
I was running a web development company at the time that made marketing automation software. So as a software guy, I looked at Bitcoin and I had a certain amount of understanding about what it was. And I felt initially it compelled to get rid of the marketing automation software company, which is things like web analytics, email marketing, lead generation, that kind of stuff. My business partner, my co-founder at the time, he didn't care about Bitcoin at all. And I just felt compelled, like, we got to do this, we got to do something here. So I spent a year fighting him basically before